Welcome to Gateway on Christmas Eve 2021. Can you believe it? It's the end of another year together. We've had an amazing month here at Gateway celebrating Advent. We've been talking about that for a month now. That for the Christian, this season of the year, it's not just about the gifts and the lights and the Christmas trees, that it's about a time of expectation, a time of waiting, a time of longing and looking for the coming, the arrival, the hope that Jesus brings. We started our Advent season here at Gateway a few weeks back at our tree lighting ceremony outside. Was anybody here for that event just a few weeks back? We had a great night together. As a church, we made over 700 cookies. That's right. I tried one from every person that brought it. It wasn't a good start to my holiday season, but it was a great night as we celebrated together that just like we turn on the tree and there's light in the midst of darkness, so too this time of year for the follower of Jesus, we celebrate the light and the life that Jesus brings. You know, that evening there was a young girl that was there. She's not in more than first or second grade. She all evening long had joy and happiness on her face, and she's actually a student in our academy as well. And so later on that very week, I went up to this young girl and I said, "Did you enjoy the tree lighting?" And she stood straight up. And with the best smile I had seen in a long time, said, "Pastor Mike, I loved it." She was so cute. Unabashed, unbridled, genuine joy. Are you with me? And hopefully this evening and in the days ahead, you'll be around young children on whose faces you will see joy just like that. Unbridled, joyful, joy like none other. And tell you what, children are what we need this time of year to remind us about Christmas and more importantly, Advent joy. But you know what? The question for us this evening is, can we find joy like that as well? As oftentimes more seasoned and perhaps more cynical adults, can we find that same type of unbridled, unabashed, genuine joy in the midst of a world where joy seems to be a commodity that is hard to find? Joy in 2021 has many adversaries. Advent joy now more than perhaps ever is hard to find. You could maybe think in your own family. I know my family plans for the holiday have been changed because of what's going on in our world. How about yours? People that you want to be with, you can't. Perhaps others that you love are sick. My prayers go out this evening to a friend of mine on the island, a pastor up on the North Shore, whose young daughter, right this very evening, is receiving cancer treatments in Manhattan. This world is not an easy place to find unabashed, unbridled, genuine joy. And what is it in your life? What uncertainty this time of year? What physical concerns? What pain? What loss? Perhaps even what fears that you might have for yourself and your family and your businesses and for those that you love most dearly. Is it possible in 2021, on Christmas Eve, to say with unabashed, unbridled, genuine expression, "God, I am joyful and full of thanks"? Well, I believe that it is possible. I believe that for the follower of God this evening, it is possible to find Advent joy, that on Christmas Eve, as we celebrate with amazing songs, as we hear the classic texts of Scripture read, that we are crying out into a dark and needy world that to know Jesus means you could have joy. You know, the Christmas story itself, when you read the accounts in Matthew and in Luke, are full of men and women that are experiencing fear and pain and anxiety and loss, very, very much like we are. Loneliness, uncertainty. These last several Sundays in our Christmas Lights series, we've been talking about those individuals and what they were going through. What would it have been like for Joseph, for this woman to whom he was betrothed, to say, I'm pregnant and yeah, it's by God? What loneliness might Joseph had felt in those moments. When we think of Mary and Joseph as well, making their way back to Bethlehem that day, the place of his family origin, to a town of no more than perhaps 100, maybe up to 300 people, as he and his wife stayed most likely in the basement room of a family apartment next to the animals and the storage bins. What anxiety would have been in their heart. And this last Sunday, we talked about that great villain of Christmas, King Herod himself. In fact, Herod shows up again with the characters we'll be discussing this evening. Herod, this man of great political and military power, this man who, on the world's standards, seemed to have everything in his corner to get what he wanted. This great king of great wealth and great influence was intimidated by the birth of a baby, so much so that he puts out a decree to kill all in Bethlehem. There was no doubt fear, anxiety, and loneliness in the lives of every mother and father in and around that first Christmas thousands of years ago. But yet, in the midst of those scenes, we see angels coming forth, proclaiming to shepherds that there is joy for them. And this evening as well, we see that there were the wise men, the Magi in Matthew, who as well experienced joy. And this evening, as we ask for ourselves, can we find joy like this? We look to the example of the Magi, those wise men, and how God enabled them to experience joy like no others. Now, perhaps you've already been to a kids' Christmas production this year. We had an amazing one here at Gateway. And part of every Christmas play, you have the shepherds, you have Joseph and Mary and the baby, you have angels, you have animals, and you have the wise men. You have the wise men. There's a lot that we don't know, however, about the wise men. The first, we really don't know what their names were. The Bible doesn't tell us. One popular legend has a name of Casper for the king of India, or Melchior as the king of Persia, or Balthazar as the king of Arabia, but we don't know. Here's another thing we don't know. We don't know how many wise men there were. I know. I've heard the songs. Aren't there supposed to be 3? In fact, even in our play here at Gateway, if you were here, we had 3 kings of Orient Are. Are you with me? But the scriptures don't tell us the exact number. Perhaps there was more. We know that they bring what? 3 gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. But the number of kings we do not know. And in fact, we're not even sure that they were kings. That was a later tradition that came up, and they might have been. But here's one more thing. They probably weren't at the manger that first night either. I know, I've ruined everybody's Christmas cards. But in Matthew, it presents for us a child Jesus coming to experience the presence of these magi. And remember, Herod says, kill everyone how many years and younger? 2 and younger. It might have been weeks, it could have been longer than that, but still, the magi, the wise men, are part of this scene of Jesus coming to earth. We know that they are from the east. We believe most likely that they were from Persia, modern-day Iraq, that they were part of a royal court of advisors to the king. No doubt them, as well as others in Persia at that time, would have had interactions with the Israelites as they found themselves captive in that land for many, many years. as they found themselves interacting with the God of Israel, as they found themselves hearing stories of who to come was, this Messiah. What would be his promise? What would be his hope? These men, at part of this royal court, they would study sacred texts. They would look to sacred scriptures from around the world at that time, looking for clues. We know as well that they were at least astronomers looking to the stars, trying to discern time and history. But as well, they were into astrology, trying to discern the future and see what might be. Greg Kutsona says this. He says that they believed that the great God had diagrammed the grand workings of history in the stars. And to study the stars was to peer into the dark future. There was a large Jewish population in their area, and the Magi were familiar with the prophecies of the Old Testament, like those of Balaam. So they saw something astounding. They saw this brilliant either confluence of planets or a supernova or perhaps a comet. Colin Nichol, a biblical scholar, has made a compelling case that it might have been a great comet. He says that he points to Balaam's prophecy, and this is the prophecy that these Magi were looking to in Numbers 24:17, with which he believes they might have been familiar. It says this in that scripture, "I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel." A comet during that time was called a scepter star because of its tail. And the Magi seem to have concluded from Balaam's oracle in Numbers about the rising scepter star and interpreted its behavior. The Magi looked to a star as some kind of clearly signifying marker of the birth of the King of the Jews. So much so that they traveled most likely upwards of 900 miles just to bow before him. They said, "We have seen a star." Only the great God could announce his king like this. What I want you to notice is that these Magi, they demonstrate for us great faith. A great faith. What kind of faith would it have taken for them to travel over 900 miles to come and worship this baby? What great faith as well it would have taken for them in the midst of their interactions with King Herod. And in Matthew chapter 2, you read it. Herod was intimidated by their recognition of this child that would be born. Herod himself was plotting in his mind how he might kill this child to protect himself. What great faith the Magi showed, these wise men, whether 3 or 300, in the great hope of this coming son. But I want you to notice as well from the background here of these Magi that their faith, though great, was less than perfect. That their faith, though an example and something to look to and to be in wonder of, that the faith as well of these Magi, it was imperfect. And you could just go down the list of why it was so. First of all, these are non-Jewish astrologers. They're looking to the stars to discern the future. This is interesting in Matthew's gospel, which focuses on its Jewish background, that here we see God's message to those of all backgrounds, to Jew and Gentile alike, that these individuals, though exhibiting great faith, they had an imperfect background and understanding of who this Jesus was. There was superstition in it. Their theology was not all put together. No doubt they as individuals as well did not have it all figured out. And yet, Jesus' birth meant that God was on the move. For these wise men, this sign in the sky was a reminder, and in a gracious way, God condescends to work within their worldview to demonstrate the beauty of Jesus, that in this moment, Jesus' birth meant that God was active and a king was born and a king was working. That amidst the dark skies, hundreds of miles away, they looked to the star and they had hope. And Matthew chapter 2, verses 10 and 11 tell us why they had joy. When they saw the stars, the scripture said, they were overwhelmed with joy. Entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and falling to their knees, they worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. Do you see it in the text? They saw this star, whatever it might have been, an alignment of planets, a comet, or a literal star, or some beautiful spiritual manifestation that God used to guide these early worshipers. When it came to the place where Jesus was, the scriptures say they were overwhelmed with joy. They were overcome with joy. It wasn't the kind of joy that you just give a little chuckle. It wasn't a little smile acknowledging, man, this might be good. The scriptures tell us that joy overcame them, overwhelmed them, knowing that the king was there. And then they fell to their knees and they worshiped him. Great joy, but imperfect faith. Great, but imperfect faith led to great joy. This evening, place great, if even imperfect faith in Jesus and find overwhelming joy. Find great joy. That's how we could be a people of joy in 2021 amidst COVID concerns and amidst the health of our friends and others, amidst the worries we may have about our kids and our schooling and our education, and amidst the concerns we have in our country and in our world. How does the follower of God find great, overwhelming joy? Couple faith, even if it is imperfect, in Jesus, and find joy. The scriptures as well tell us that joy for the follower of God, it does not depend on circumstances around us going the way we desire. Joy for the Christian does not mean ease and comfort. Think of what it would have meant for the wise men and the magi that evening when they came to worship Jesus. Herod is plotting to kill and destroy. And amidst the world and amidst the society where we often feel the pain and fear of loss right around the corner, we're very much like these magi were thousands of years ago, looking to Jesus and hoping for joy. For the follower of Christ here this evening, things may be falling out of your control. Things around you may seem to be more unsteady than ever. You may have greater prayer requests for your family, for your health, for those you love more than ever before. And if you bring your faith, even if it has been beaten, even if it is imperfect, even if it is struggling, even if it is processing grief and loss, and look to Jesus, you, like the wise men, could have great joy. When we look to anyone or anything else for lasting joy, we will be disappointed. So, follower of Christ tonight, look afresh to Jesus. Look where that star ultimately points and say, if I know him, joy is mine. And if you're here this evening and you have never tasted of this great joy, the scriptures tell us that tonight could be that night of salvation for you. Tonight could be that night where you look to Jesus and you say, the things around me are out of control. My job may be insecure. My family's health may not be steady. The fear I have of what I see in the world and in society around me overwhelms me at night. I wake up and I'm sweating and I'm concerned. In the midst of all these things, Jesus comes and says, I offer joy. As we've been talking, I offer peace and hope and love and joy. And here's the reason why. Because Jesus, thousands of years ago at Christmas, came in the flesh, God in the flesh, to live the life you could not live, and to die the death that you deserve, and to rise again as victorious over sin and death and the evil one. And if you've trusted in Jesus, if you have relaxed and believed and relied on him for your salvation, your future is secure, your present is certain, and there is hope this evening. For some of us, we've never come to this place where we have said, Jesus, I'm not putting my belief in my own salvation. I'm not putting my belief in my own ability. That, Lord, I recognize how far short I fall, and God, I trust in you. Bring your great faith, even if it feels imperfect, even if you feel like you don't have the answers, and place it in Jesus and find forgiveness and great, great joy. This has been a challenging month in our world, and a challenging month we've been going through as well as a church. And you know what I've been reminding myself? Of that face of that little girl that week when she saw the Christmas tree. And I've been replaying it over and over again. Oh, Pastor Mike, I loved it. I loved it. And that same type of unbridled, unabashed joy can be yours as well when you look not just to the star, but when you look to the one to whom it points, to Jesus. And you can find joy that lasts forever.